Watson. I'm one of the DanceBlue volunteers, and today I'm going to be reading you guys Flat Stanley. This one's called Invisible Stanley, and we're going to read chapters 4 through 6. And whenever there's a picture, I'm going to show it to you, okay? So let's get started. Chapter 4, In the Park. It was Sunday afternoon. Arthur had gone to visit a friend, so Mr. and Miss Lambchop set out with Stanley for a nearby park. The streets were crowded, and Stanley carried his balloon to lessen the risk of being jostled by people hurrying by. Near the park, they met Ralph Jones, an old college friend of Mr. Lambchop. "Always a treat running into your family, George," said Mr. Jones. "The older boy was flat once, I recall. You had him rolled up, and once you had a foreign lad with you, a prince, yes?" "What a memory you have," said Mr. Lambchop, recalling the young genie who had been with them at the time. "How are you, Ralph?" said Miss Lambchop. "Stanley, say hello to Mr. Jones." "Take care," said Mr. Jones. "That balloon is floating. Just where is Stanley?" "Holding the balloon," Stanley said. "I got invisible somehow." "Is that so? First flat, now invisible?" Ralph Jones shook his head. "Kids. Always one thing or another. Eh, George? My oldest needs dental work. Well, I must run. Remember me to the prince. Prince Fawzi Mustafa, Aslan Mirza Malek named Haraz, as I recall." "A truly remarkable memory," said Miss Lambchop as Mr. Jones walked away. By a field in the park, the Lambchops found a bench on which to rest. On the field, children were racing bicycles round and round. Suddenly, shouts rose. "Give up Billy! Billy's no good! Billy, Billy, silly Billy! He can't ride a bike!" "That must be Billy," said Miss Lambchop. "The little fellow's so far behind the rest. Oh dear, how he teeters." Stanley remembered how nervous he had been when he was learning to ride, and how his father had steadied him. "Poor Billy, if only I'll do it," he thought, and tied the balloon to the bench. When Billy came around again, Stanley darted onto the field, taking hold of the teetering bike from behind, and began to run. "Uh-oh," said little Billy, surprised to be gaining speed. Stanley ran harder, keeping the bicycle steady. The pedals rose and fell, faster and faster, then faster still. "Yikes!" cried Billy. Stanley ran as fast as he could. Soon they passed a boy riding just ahead, then another boy and another. Not until they had passed all the other riders did Stanley, now out of breath, let go. "Whee!" Billy shouted, and went round once more by himself. "You win, Billy," shouted the other boys. "How did you get so good? And so suddenly? You should have had us fooled." Stanley got his breath back. There's a picture of them riding the bike. And returned to Mr. and Miss Lambchop on the bench. "Too bad you missed it, Stanley," said Mr. Lambchop, pretending he had not guessed the truth. "That teetery little boy, he rode very well suddenly." "Oh," said Stanley, pretending also. "I wasn't paying attention, I guess." Mr. Lambchop gave him a little poke to the ribs. Half an hour passed, and Miss Lambchop worried that he might be sitting too long in the sun. In Stanley's present state, she said, over-tanning would be difficult to detect. Just then, a young man and a pretty girl strolled past, hand in hand, and halted in a groove to trees close by. That is Philip, the son of my dear friend, Miss Hodgson," Miss Lambchop said. "And the girl must be his sweetheart, Lucia. Such a sad story. They're in love, and Philip wants very much to propose marriage, but he is too shy. He tries and tries, Miss Hodgson says, but each time his courage fails. And Lucia is too timid to coax a proposal from him." Mr. Lambchop was not the least bit shy. "I'll go introduce myself," he said, and popped the question for him. "No, George," Miss Lambchop shook her head. "Lucia must hear the words from Philip's own lips." An idea came back to Stanley. "Be right back," he said, and ran to the grove in which the young couple stood. Once behind them, he stood very still. "Nice day, Lucia, don't you think?" Philip was saying. "Though you do say it might rain, who knows?" "You're quite right, I'm sure, Philip," the girl replied. "I do value your opinion about the weather." "You are kind, very kind." Philip trembled a bit. "Lucia, I want to ask, would you consent, that is?" He gulped. "What a pretty dress you have on." "Thank you," said Lucia. "I like your necktie. You were saying, Philip?" "Ah," said Philip. "Right, yes. Well, for some time now, dear Lucia, my dearest wish, I want—" He bit his lip. "Look, A dark cloud there in the west. It might rain after all. I hope not, Lucia seemed close to tears. I mean, if it rained, well, we might get wet. This is very boring, Stanley thought. The conversation grew even more boring. Again and again, Philip failed to declare his love, chattering instead about the weather, or the look of a tree, or children playing in the park. I want to ask, dear Lucia, Philip began, again for perhaps the 20th time. If you will, that is, if... Yes, said Lucia, also perhaps for the 20th time. What, Philip? What do you wish to say? Stanley leaned forward. Lucia, said Philip. Marry me, said Stanley, making his voice so much like Philip's as he could. Lucia's eyes opened wide. I will, Philip, she cried. Of course I will marry you. Philip looked as if he might faint. You will? Lucia hugged him and then kissed. I've proposed at last, cried Philip. I can hardly believe I spoke the words. You didn't, Stanley thought. Mr. and Miss Lambchop had seen the lovers embrace. Well done, Stanley, they said when he returned to their bench, and several more times on the way home. Miss Hodgson called that evening to report that Philip and Lucia would soon be wed. How wonderful, Miss Lambchop said. She had glimpsed them in the park just that afternoon. Such a handsome pair, so much in love. Stanley teased her. You said never to speak up on people or spy on them, but I did today. Are you mad at me? Oh, very angry, said Miss Lambchop and kissed the top of his head. Chapter 5, The TV Show. Arthur was feeling left out. Stanley always gets to have interesting adventures, he said, and that newspaper story was just about him. Nobody seems interested in me. The best way to draw attention, dear, said Miss Lambchop, is by one character. Be kindly and fair. Cheerfulness is much admired, as is wit. I can't manage all that, said Arthur. Miss Lambchop spoke privately to Stanley. Your brother is a bit jealous, she said. When I was flat, Arthur was jealous because people stared at me, Stanley said. Now you can't see me at all, and he's jealous again. Miss Lambchop sighed. If you can find a way to cheer him, do. The very next day, an important TV person telephoned Miss Lambchop. Teddy Talker here, Lambchop, he said. Most of the enormously popular TV shows Talking with Teddy Talker. Will Stanley appear on it? It would please us to have Stanley appear anywhere at all, Mr. Lambchop said. People can't see him, you know. I just say he's there, said Teddy Talker. Speak to the boy. Let me know. Stanley said that he did not particularly care to go on TV, but then he remembered about cheering up Arthur. All right, he said, but Arthur too. He likes to tell jokes and do magic tricks. Say we'll both be on the show. Arthur was very pleased, and that evening the brothers planned what they would do. The next morning, Mr. Lambchop told Teddy Talker. Excellent plan, said the TV man. This Friday, yes? Thank you, Lambchop. Welcome, everybody, said Teddy Talker that Friday evening from the stage of the TV show. Wonderful guests tonight, including an invisible boy. In the front row, applauding with the rest of the audience, Mr. and Miss Lambchop thought of Stanley and Arthur. Now waiting in a dressing room. Backstage. How exciting they must be. The other guests were already seated by the sofa by Teddy Talker's desk. He chatted first with a lady who had written a book about sausage, next with a tennis champion who became a rabbi, then with a very strong young woman who had won a beauty contest, but planned now to devote himself to the cause of world peace. At last came the announcement that began the Lambchop plan. Invisible Stanley had been delayed, but will be here shortly, Teddy Talker told the audience. There's a picture of them there. Meanwhile, we are fortunate in having with us his very talented brother. Protest rose. Brother? A visible brother? Drat! Good thing we got him free. Ladies and gentlemen, said Teddy Talker. Mirth and magic with Arthur Lambchop. Arthur stepped out onto the stage wearing a smart black magician's cape. Miss Lambchop had made for him carrying a small box, which had placed on Teddy Talker's desk. Hello, everyone, he said. The box is for later. Now let's have fun. Heard the story about the 3 holes in the ground? He waited, smiling. Well? 2 people laughed, but that was all. I don't understand, said a lady sitting behind Mr. and Miss Lambchop. Mr. Lambchop turned around in his seat. "A well is a hole in the ground," he said. Well, 3 holes." "Ah, I see," said the lady. "A riddle, ladies and gentlemen," cried Arthur. Where do kings keep their armies?" "Where?" someone called. "In their sleeveys," said Arthur. Many people laughed now, including the lady who had missed the first joke. "I got that one," she said. "A mind-reading trick," Arthur announced. He shuffled a deck of cards and let Teddy Talker draw one. "Don't let me see it," he said, "but look at it. Picture it in your mind. I will concentrate, using my magic powers." Arthur closed his eyes. Your card, sir, is the 4 of hearts." "It is," cried Teddy Talker. "It is 4 of hearts." Voices rose again. Incredible. He can read minds. So young, too. "Do that one again, lad." "Certainly," said Arthur. But he had used a false deck in which every card was the 4 of hearts, and the audience would surely guess if the card was named again. Fortunately, the brothers had thought of this backstage. Stanley tied his balloon to a chair. Arthur now shuffled a real deck of cards, then called for a volunteer. When an elderly gentleman came up onto the stage, Stanley tiptoed onto the stand behind him. The audience applauded the volunteer. "How peculiar this is," Stanley thought. "Hundreds of people looking, but no one can see me." "Draw a card, sir," said Arthur. "Thank you. Keep it hidden, but picture it in your mind." Again, closing his eyes, he pretended to be thinking hard. A quick peek showed Stanley that the volunteer held the 10 of clubs. He tiptoed over to whisper to his brother's ear. Arthur opened his eyes. "I have it. The card is the 10 of clubs." "Yes, bravo," cried the old gentleman. The audience clapped hard as he returned to his seat. Mr. Lambchop smiled at the lady behind him. "Our son," he said. "So clever," said the lady. "What will he do next?" Miss Lambchop drew a deep breath. That morning, Stanley and Arthur had borrowed a pet frog from the boy next door. What came next, she knew, would be the most daring part of the evening's plan. "Ladies and gentlemen," said Arthur, "a new kind of magic. Arthur Lambchop, that's me, and Henry, the air-dancing frog." He lifted Henry from the box on Teddy Talker's desk and held him up. Henry, who appeared to be smiling, wore a little white shirt with an H on it, also made by Miss Lambchop. "Fly, Henry," called Arthur. "Fly out and stand in the air." Stepping forward, Stanley took Henry from Arthur's hands and ran to the far side of the stage. There he stopped, holding the frog high above his head. Henry wiggled his legs. "Amazing," shouted the audience. "Who'd believe it? That's some frog. What keeps him up there?" "Circle, Henry," Arthur commanded. "Circle in the air." Stanley walked rapidly in circles, swaying Henry as he went. The audience was tremendously impressed. What a fine magician. Mind reading and frog flying? You don't see that every day. Pretending to control Henry's flight, Arthur kept a finger pointed at Stanley. Swoop the frog all about the stage. "Whoops," cried Teddy Talker as Henry flew above his desk. On the lawn sofa, the sausage writer and the tennis rabbi and the beauty contest winner ducked down. Even Mr. and Miss Lambchop, who knew the secret of Henry's flight, thought it was an amazing sight. At last, to great applause, Arthur took Henry into his own hands and returned him to his little box. Stanley tiptoed off to get his smiley face balloon. The plan now called for Teddy Talker to announce the arrival of the Invisible Boy and introduce him. But Arthur had stepped forward again. "Thank you for cheering me," he told the audience, but I have to say something. That first mind-reading trick, I really did do that one. But the second trick, actually, I can't read minds at all. And the flying frog, Voices rose. "Can't read minds? We've been lied to? The frog was lying? Not the frog. Stupid." "Wait, he's not done." "Please, listen," said Arthur. "It wouldn't be fair to let you think I did everything by myself. I had a helper. For the second trip, he saw the card and told me what it was. And Henry, well, my helper was wishing him in the air." By now, the audience was terribly confused. Who? What helper? It was just a regular frog. "But some frogs fly." "No, squirrels, not frogs." Arthur went on. "My brother, Stanley, helped me. He fixed it for me to be on the show. He's a really nice brother, and I thank him a lot." Teddy Talker had sprung to his feet. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I now present a very special guest who has been here all along. The Invisible Boy, Stanley Lambchop." Stanley came onto the stage carrying a smiley face balloon. Arthur put out his hand, and the audience could tell that Stanley had taken it. There was tremendous applause. The brothers bowed again and again, Stanley ballooning, bobbling up and down. Arthur's smile was plain to see, and Mr. and Miss Lambchop, as they applauded, thought that even the balloon's printed smile seemed brighter than before. "I have 2 children myself," said the lady behind them, "both entirely visible and without theatrical flair. We are a very usual family." "As are we," said Mr. Lambchop, smiling. "Mostly, that is." Arthur left the stage, and Stanley sat on the sofa between the sausage writer and the beauty contest winner, and answered Teddy Talker's questions. He had no idea how he became invisible, he said, and it wasn't actually a great treat being that way, since he often got bumped into and had to keep reminding people he was there. After that, Teddy Talker thanked everyone for coming, and the show was over. Back home, Arthur felt that evening had gone well. "I got lots of applause," he said, "but maybe it was mostly because of what Stanley did. I shouldn't be too proud, I guess." "Poise and good humor contribute greatly to performer's success," said Miss Lambchop. "You did well on both those counts. Return Henry in the morning, dear. Time now for bed." Chapter 6. The Bank Robbers. I'll show you the picture now for this one. Mr. Lambchop and Stanley and Arthur were watching the evening's news on TV. "More dreadful scandal and violence tomorrow," said the newscaster, ending a report on national affairs. "Here in our fair city, another bank was robbed today, the 3rd this month. The unusual robbers." "Enough of crime," bustled in Miss Lambchop, switched off the TV. "Come to dinner." Stanley supposed he would never know how the robbers were unusual. But the next afternoon, while strolling with his father, he found out. On the way home, they passed a bank. "I must cash a check, but it's very crowded in there," said Mr. Lambchop. "Wait here, Stanley." Stanley waited. Suddenly, cries arose from within the bank. "Lady bank robbers, just like they said on TV." I laughed when I heard it. "Me too." 2 women, dressed in fancy hats, one stout and one very tall, ran out of the bank, each with a money bag in one hand and a pistol in the other. "Stay in there," the stout woman called back into the bank, her voice high and scratchy. "Don't anyone run out, or else bang, bang." "Right," shouted the tall woman. Also in an odd high voice. "Just because we are females doesn't mean we can't shoot." "Being invisible won't protect me if bullets go flying around," Stanley thought. He looked for a place to hide. An empty Yum Yum ice cream van was parking close by, and he jumped into it. His balloon still floated outside the van, its strings caught in the door, but he did not dare to rescue it. Scrunching down behind cardboard barrels marked Chocolate Yum, Strawberry Yum, and Yum Crunch, he peeked out. An alarm was ringing inside the bank, and shouts rose again. "Ha! Now you're in trouble. The police will come. Put the money back where you found it, ladies." Then Stanley saw that the 2 women were running towards him, carrying the money bags. They were stopping. They were getting into the Yum Yum van. Scrunching down again, he held his breath. The robbers were in the van now, close to where he hid. "Hurry up," said the stout woman in a surprisingly deep voice. "These shoes are killing me." The tall woman opened the Yum Crunch barrel, and Stanley saw that it was empty. Then both robbers poured packets of money from their bags into the barrel and put the lid back on. Stanley could hardly believe what he saw next. The robbers threw aside their fancy hats and tugged off wigs, and now they were undressed, pulling their dresses over their heads. They were men, Stanley realized, not women. Yes, underneath the dresses. They wore white ice cream man pants with the legs rolled up and white Yum Yum shirts. "Whew, what a relief, Howard." The stout robber kicked off the woman's shoes and put on white sneakers. "They'll never catch us now, Ralph," said the tall one. The robbers unrolled their trouser legs and threw their female clothing into another empty barrel, the one marked Chocolate Yum. Then they jumped into the front seats, and the tall man started driving. The van sped off. Behind the barrel, Stanley held his breath again. This pair was too clever to be caught. They were sure to get away. No one would suspect 2 Yum Yum men of being the lady, but the van was slowing. It was stopping. Stanley peeked out again. A police car blocking the road, and 2 policemen stood beside it, inspecting cars as they passed by. In a moment, they were at a Yum Yum van. "A bank got robbed," the first policeman told the driver, "by two women. You ice cream fellas seen any suspicious-looking females?" My, the tall man shook his head. "More and more these days, women fill in roles once played by men. Bless them, I say." Beside him, the stout man said hastily, "But bank robbing, Howard? That's wrong." The second policeman looked into the back of the van. "Just ice cream here," he told his partner. "The trickery is working," Stanley thought. "How can I?" An idea came to him. Reaching out, he flipped the lid of the chocolate yum barrel. "Loose lid," said the second policeman. "Better tighten." "Hey." "Hey, this barrel is full of female clothes." "Oh," the tall robber made a sad face. "For the needy," he said. "They were my late mother's." Stanley flipped the lid off the Yum Crunch barrel, and the packets of money were plain to see. "Your mother was a mighty rich woman," shouted the first policeman, drawing his pistol. "Hands up, you two." As the robbers were being handcuffed, another police car drove up. Mr. Lambchop jumped out of the van. "The balloon on the van," she shouted. "We've been following it. Stanley, are you in there?" "Yes," Stanley called back. "I'm fine. The bank robbers are caught. They weren't ladies at all, just dressed that way." The handcuffed robbers were dreadfully confused. "Who's yelling in our van? Who stuck a balloon in the door? Have you gone crazy?" they asked. "It's my son Stanley," said Mr. Lambchop. "He is invisible, unfortunately. Thank goodness he was not hurt." "That must be the same invisible boy they had on TV," said the first policeman. "An invisible boy?" the tall robber groaned. "After all my careful planning." The stout robber shrugged. He couldn't think of anything. "Howard, don't blame yourself." The robbers were driving off to jail, and Stanley went home with Mr. Lambchop in a cab. Stanley had been far too brave. Miss Lambchop said that she had heard what he had done. "Really? Flipping those ice cream lids?" Arthur said he'd flip them too if he thought of it. The end.